Keith, can I start by just asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself
Yeah,
and
of
your
course.
experience as a hard of hearing person?
Yeah, my name's Keith Lakeman. I work for Moreline, which is a call centre. Obviously, I mean, it's now 26 years I've been in the job, and progressively over the 26 years, because of constant use of earphones, working, it's starting to diminish my hearing. I do have some issues when I'm speaking to people in a loud environment where I can't actually hear what they're saying. You know, they're standing right next to me. Potentially, it's virtually I have to have them directly looking at my face to virtually get an idea of what they're speaking about. Because if they turn, I can't hear them. So
Yeah,
over the years, it's been progressively starting to get worse.
yeah, yeah. I've certainly come across other people where the hearing has gone progressively. Now, you produced this booklet, written this booklet, which I think you called Silent Triumphs. What inspired you or motivated you to write the booklet?
Over the years, same as yourself, Kevin, I've been involved with disabilities within the union. So I've been doing that on and off since around about 2009. What also as well motivated me is that we didn't know until probably the latter end of my mother's life that for several years she'd had a hearing problem. And what she was doing was she taught herself how to sort of lip read.
Yeah,
I mean, at like 70 and 80-year old, she had to start a lip reading of what people were talking about to get involved in the conversation. It wasn't until later life, probably 3 or 4 years before she passed away, that we had hearing aids for her. Yeah. And also, my father had hearing problems because he used to work in the shipyards. So obviously, because of the noise from sort of heavy industry, he had issues with his hearing. So obviously, I had a little bit of knowledge of what a family member goes through dealing with someone who has hearing problems.
I mean, next question. I hope it's not like a repetition of the last one, but I just wanted to ask: is there any particular reason why Deaf Awareness Week is important to you?
Yeah, as I say, I mean, obviously working with people who have hearing impairments and also working with people within the unions and with hearing impairments, I think it's beneficial to actually highlight some of the things that they go through on a day-to-day basis. Where, I mean, obviously people with sort of like relative non-hearing problems have a standard of living, where some people with an actual deafness problem or
Yeah,
issue or challenge has a lot more challenges to deal with within communities. And I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get involved with the Deafness Awareness Week.
fantastic. And I mean, if you had to sort of put it down in a few words, is there a single message you'd like to get out to people during Deaf Awareness Week?
Definitely, yeah. I think what we have to look at is trying to encompass everyone within the community, whether it be deaf people, whether it be disabled people, whether it be people with neurodiversities. I think we have to try and now look at an encompassing community where everybody gets involved, because I think there's a lot of people out there that are missing out on some of the benefits people with deafness can bring to the table by sort of like obscuring them from the community or pushing them away because of their challenges.
Now, in your booklet, you give lots of information about different types of hearing loss and the challenges facing people.
Yeah.
But in the booklet, you also talk about deaf heroes. Who's your deaf hero?
Yeah, well, I actually, within the booklet, I put two of my heroes in there. I mean, one that goes all the way back to the 19th century, which was Beethoven. I mean, within his time, I mean, he was an innovator. The guy was predominantly deaf, and he still produced the music that he did. I think that's tremendous what he did. But also as well later on, you're looking at Helen Keller, which I mean, one, she was deaf, but she was also blind. You know, what I mean, these two persons that are in the book, I mean, overcame so many challenges. It was unbelievable.
Absolutely. And as part of Deaf History Month, we actually had a profile of Helen Keller on the on All for Inclusion web. As someone living with being hard of hearing and knowledge of the challenges faced by deaf people, what do you think employers and trade unions should be doing to support deaf workers?
I think obviously text to speak is the relevant sort of program that can put in place. Where obviously, you know, if you are having meetings um, where you can actually somebody can see the word progressing across the screen, rather than trying to find ways and means of hearing the conversation. I think that's one big thing. Also, as well, to try and work on hearing loops within the organisation for meeting rooms. I think that's a big thing because a lot of companies don't even bother doing that. I think providing as much possible sort of technology there is, I mean, within the limits, obviously financial, you can use to benefit people with deafness to progress through the day-to-day sort of work life. And that's what I do think that it should be doing.
I mean, when you mentioned using a technology which is sometimes called assistive technology, does it concern you that the government seem to be proposing to reduce the funding available for the Access to Work programme?
Yeah, I do have to say, Kevin, when I saw the potential bill that they're looking at doing from the point of view of disenfranchising disabled people, I think it's a terrible waste of the government money to try and force people into something that they can't do, or potentially, if they do, is going to be a risk to their health. And because they actually sort of going to do this disability plan to try and force people back into the work when they're not ready to do it. We've already seen in the past when people have been sort of forced back into work where people have passed away because of heart attacks, they've had stress issues. I mean, people have committed suicide rather than face these issues. So I think they're going down a slippery slope, really, from my point of view.
Yeah, so I take it from what you're saying there, because I was going to ask you about whether you thought the government's proposed reforms or ideas to get disabled people into work would actually work. And I mean, from what you just said there, it sounds as though you don't.
I don't think the way they're going through the plans is a positive sort of stage for people with disabilities. Possibly, I mean, if you looked at the previous years when we used to have a company called Remploy, who specifically dealt with disabled people moving back into the work sort of like community, I think they had a better plan to try and formulate slow return into work rather than actually forced return into work, which I can see happening when the disabilities bill pushing through and sort of like forcing people back into work.
I think the government proposals raise more questions than it answers. I mean, tell me, I think you said you work in a call centre and you're hard of hearing. Tell us about the barriers you face on a day-to-day basis as hard of hearing person.
Yeah, the thing is, obviously, with the job I do now, because of my hearing issues, I now have to have a double headset. I mean, similar to the headset you have at the moment there, Karen. I have to have a double headset because if I don't, then I get external noise from outside that disturbs the hearing. I've got trying to listen to a customer, or even listen to like a webinar that we do, or team meetings that we do. If I don't have the double headset, then it basically sort of disturbs my hearing.
Yeah, I mean, as a deaf person myself, I wear these so I can hear, because if I don't wear them, then the volume on computers tend not to be sufficient for me to hear anything.
Yeah.
So this is one way also to block out any other sounds, as you say. I mean, that must be a big problem for you in a call centre, because I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you're probably in like an open plan office, so you
Yeah.
go and get a lot of babble of noise going on.
Yeah, that's the thing is I've got like several persons like sitting around me. So obviously they're chatting to customers or chatting between themselves. And I say that's why I now have to have a double headset to sort of keep that noise out, so I can actually hear what the customer's saying. Yeah, definitely.
Just to conclude, I mean, thank you for doing this interview, Keith.
No.
Is there anything else you want to share with us about your experience as a hard of hearing person, or anything else relating to a disability that you'd like to share
Yeah,
with us?
I mean, obviously we do have a company that works with hearing impaired people, and we have a person that used to be on the phones, but because they had severe hearing problems, at least the company found an alternative job for them, doing the administration, doing the paperwork, doing the post. So I think obviously trying to utilise people to the best of their abilities. If they can't do one job, possibly you can try and find other jobs for them to do rather than put them on a scrap heap.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with that, Keith. And one of the things that concerns me, as far as I understand the government's current proposals, is that if they cut back on access to work and financial support to support people into work, then employers are just going to turn around and say, we won't employ this person because we're not prepared to pay out for the assistive technology that they need so they can do the job. That
Yeah.
really concerns me.
Yeah, I do believe that is one of the issues, that companies aren't going to pay out for that. If they don't employ the person, then they're not going to pay out to try and do reasonable adjustments for them to work in the building or work at that actual company. And I think that's going to be used to beat sort of disabled people and deaf people with when this bill goes forward.
Yeah. Thanks very much for that, Keith. I mean, I just want to wrap up by sort of saying that Keith and myself were involved in a webinar for Deaf Awareness Week, which is open to all members of Unite the Union. And it's going to be a hybrid webinar based in Bristol on the 8th of May. And then there's a fully online webinar on the 14th of May. The 8th of May is a lunchtime, 12:30 to 1:30. 15th of May is an evening one from 6:30 to 8 o'clock. And that's fully online. But anyone in Unite is very welcome to join in and register for those webinars. But thank you very much, Keith.
No problem, Kevin. Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you, Scott. Yeah.